and welcome back. Karen Price calls for online censorship through media companies. It wouldn't be such a problem, of course, it would be a non-issue, a non-story, if it wasn't for the response from the so-called conservative government saying, maybe you've got a point and maybe there should actually be penalties for the online abuse, as you're suggesting. Maybe we should make legal things criminal instead. Maybe we should limit freedom of expression in order to protect people's feelings, which comes back to the age-old argument of, well, how do we know what offends you? How are we supposed to decide? Well, it's these certain words or these certain phrases which are then made offensive, which is fine until you then realize that there are ways that you could use those phrases in an innocuous manner. I mean, for the YouTube shadow banning, for example, or the de-throttling of content, people who have tried to make documentaries on World War II and mention the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany have, of course, found that the algorithm has treated them unfavorably because they've simply said the word Nazi, even though they're not encouraging it or suggesting that it's happening in modern day at all. They're simply mentioning it as a matter of fact from 80 years ago. But nonetheless, of course, they're then getting affected. And on the flip side, we've got people who wish to propagate these ideas, whether you're left-wing, right-wing, authoritarian, libertarian, whatever it might be. And you can then, of course, use coded language. For example, using Yahoo's, Google, Bing, and Facebook and Twitter as code words. And then, of course, even like Academic Agent joining in with the reds and the blues and the pinks, for example, if you go into his coded way, in order to try and get around it. So it doesn't stop the people from discussing these ideas and saying the things that they want to get across, but it does stop the people who are trying to make more news-based things in order to get word out about it. So any forms of these censorships won't work. We've seen the same in the Soviet Union as well, whereby they'd have their food and it would be just a set thing in very plain packaging, in which case, because they didn't have brands out there to know what the quality of the food was that they were buying, they then learned to read barcodes in order to know which one was the good tin of beans and which one was the bad tin of beans, basically. And so there will always be a way around it. It will just make things a lot more difficult for people, really unnecessarily, that it will never be enough, essentially. So Karen is saying that, there's a problem because people think it's funny to show to their friends. There's no penalty. They might get their account closed down, but they open it in another name or another email address and carry on. Nothing has improved. Things have gotten worse. So yes, even though that they've enacted changes by saying you'll have your account closed, people still get around it, almost as if it wouldn't help. So there was, of course, a committee in 2018 chaired by Catherine McKinnell, who said it's clear there was a big problem. It is getting worse, not better, and something needs to be done. She said the government had looked into the issue and a proposal document. A white paper had been produced. She said the work had stalled because of the coronavirus pandemic, but the committee was now attempting to raise profile of the issue and its urgency. The MP said the committee will be taking evidence from social media companies as part of the inquiry. I can't remember which year it was now, but it wasn't that long ago that the person who received the most vitriol and online hate through Twitter, I believe, was Ben Shapiro. And it's hardly a surprise that they didn't want to do anything about that. And also Bobby Norris has spoken to MPs to share his experiences for homophobic abuse, and more than 133,000 people signed his petition on tackling trolling without really realising what it is. So addressing the issue of online harms in the Commons last month, here we go. Boris Johnson, Bojo himself, said there was a real risk that during the lockdown, terrible things have been going on behind closed doors and closed curtains in this country and the internet. We had a summit on the matter in Number 10 recently, and we are working at a pace, as he knows, on new legislation against online harms. However, to state the obvious, the Index on Censorship, a campaigning organisation, said the plans risk damaging freedom of expression in the UK. It is already, but in particular, it said a proposed new statutory duty of care to tackle online harms and substantial fines would create a strong incentive for companies to remove content, and that the harms are not clearly defined but include activities and materials that are legal. which is always the problem with censorship, that they will just move and move to make legal things illegal, so that, of course, you can't express yourself. And yes, we all want to stop hate for profit, yeah, but the problem comes with who on earth decides that. And if it's that these ideas are quite unfavourable, we don't like them, or we're not going to have it against this protected group, then that might be fine for you while you're in a protected group. But if you're giving that much power to an organisation, then what happens when the organisation changes their mind on who they wish to protect? At that point, you're going to be on the receiving end of the vitriol, and there's nothing you can do about it, because if you try and speak out, then you will be censored. So, I don't know why these people don't learn, and why somebody like Boris Johnson can't simply say, no, we can't do anything about that. You have block functions. You don't have to read them. You don't have to listen to them. You can do that. There's a similar problem that Emperor Lemon pointed out, which was that just as it might be detrimental for your mental health to read a load of negative comments all the time, it's also negative to read a load of positive comments all the time, to give you an overinflated sense of self-worth and to be so grandiose and self-aggrandizing that you will then not be able to separate fact from fiction if you're receiving so much praise, or faux praise, as often as you are, that humans are not built to receive such information from so many people so frequently, and especially if it is as impersonal as it is, that if you use it to be pretty straight-laced, and you can discuss things as you wish, and you're not taking offense to things, and you can just ignore people because you're well adjusted, then there isn't a problem. And of course, that's what we're seeing over at Parler. Of course, sign up if you're happy to give your phone number out. But that is clearly a way to go. It essentially just comes down to you as the individual. Stop trying to force your sense of morality onto other people, and you'll be just fine. That you can communicate with who you want to communicate. If you wish to use social media because you get your validation from other people, and you need a load of other people, then maybe you need some introspection in order to realize what it is that you want to do with your life, instead of trying to please so many other people and strangers that you've never met and have no idea who they are, and therefore their words should not have such a huge meaning on your life. Sure, if a load of people are pointing out something, maybe it's a problem. Maybe you should see what you can do about it in order to rectify it, and you might be happier for it. There are numerous, uncountable stories of people who have been bullied as children. They then thought, maybe these bullies had something worth saying. They did something about it and have been much happier and better off for it. Like Frank Sinatra says, that the best revenge is massive success. That having those hardships at an earlier age then puts you in good stead for the rejection you'll undoubtedly face later on, and it makes you more adaptable in order to change to the ever-changing circumstances you find yourself in, and you'll get more success that way. So it can definitely be a positive. Every cloud has a silver lining, and the same thing goes with the harassment, as they say, that you could find something worthwhile out of it. And if you don't want to go down that route, and you're too offended by it, and you can't laugh it off because you're that insecure, then stop using social media. It seems like it isn't for you. If you can't handle that level of criticism, and you don't know how to block people, then stop using it. You can't change people's behavior like that. And if you censor, it'll only end up badly. Because who knows when it'll end? Who knows who decides what's hateful and what's not? Who decides who should be banned? Who decides what the penalties are? There are so many things that are up in the air that it is so unreliable and has never, ever been accurately enforced that it isn't worth doing. It's far better to allow the freedom of expression, or at least freedom of speech, in order to understand what people are trying to get across. And then you can have that from both sides. And then it's up to you what you wish to believe and what you wish to read into. And then it's down to you. You can then get the unfiltered opinion of millions of people, if you're actually that popular, but anything up to that. And then you decide what it is that you want to do about it. If someone like Donald Trump, that is apparently so thin-skinned, can handle so many replies on Twitter, then I'm sure you can too. But Ofcom's boss has said the watchdog will not hesitate to impose fines on social media firms who fail to deal with harmful content if, as expected, it is appointed as regulator. Chief Executive Dame Melanie Dawes said Ofcom would also consider temporarily suspending platforms in extreme cases of harm. So they do not wish to treat them as platforms, they wish to treat them as publishers. That if you do not get rid of all the material that we don't like, then we will suspend you. In which case, the platforms, of course, will not see it as viable and will not wish to function. At that point, you're going to have like the new Silk Road and dark web extravaganzas becoming more mainstream so that people can just talk to each other. Because no company would want to be, no individual person running it would want to be well known enough, because otherwise they'll be culpable as well. So they'll want something which doesn't have a paper trail if they wish to facilitate the dialogue, and we all know that it is incredibly popular, so there are good business ventures there, which is why we've seen Parler spring up not so long ago and then get incredibly popular recently. So there will always be an audience for it, even if governments try to stop it. And of course the reason that they're trying to stop it is to preserve power, either indirectly by giving people what apparently some people want, or directly by suppressing information about them, as we're seeing in China. It's all because of Karen. But as always, until next time, have a good one.